Okay, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, Terry Schilling from the American Principles Project will be here as well this hour. BlueAnon is still running wild with a conspiracy theory that President Trump wasn't actually almost assassinated, now 2 weekends ago, that there was no attempt on his life. Of course, there was. But breathing life into the conspiracy theory, for whatever reason, is the FBI director, Chrispher Wray. And I watched so much of his testimony this week. Maybe I missed it as I was either listening or I just didn't see this portion. But Chrispher Wray apparently said out loud that there's a question of whether or not Trump was actually hit by a bullet. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were a lot of photos and videos of President Trump speaking. Heck, even the New York Times is saying, yeah, he was hit by a bullet. They have a big piece up today trying to silence all of the BlueAnon people to say, yeah, it was a bullet that hit Trump. In fact, the headline on their piece is, speculation swirls about what hit Trump. An analysis suggests it was a bullet. What do you mean, an analysis? What kind of analysis did you do? Did you use your eyeballs? Did you stare at video? Did you see your own photographer's picture of a bullet in midair behind Trump? Sure, that would be a way to assess this. But here's what the FBI director said this week. Here's Chrispher Wray in questioning with, I think, Jim Jordan. Here's what he had to say.
I guess I'm not clear exactly where you said there were 8 shell casings on the roof, so 8 bullets were fired. We obviously know that Mr. Comparatori lost his life. Two other rally goers were injured, seriously injured, and then the one that hit President Trump. Does that account for, were some of these individuals hit multiple times? Where did all 8 bullets go, is I guess my question.
I don't have that in front of me. I'm happy to circle back and get that to you. It's assuming we have that information yet. As I said, I think with respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that that hit his ear. So it's conceivable. Although, as I say here right now, I don't know whether that bullet, in addition to causing the grazing, could have also landed somewhere else.
Okay, so you heard there he said it's still, I guess, a subject of some debate, according to the FBI director, whether or not Trump was hit by a bullet or shrapnel on that day. Now, let me just point out the obvious. It doesn't matter, actually. At its core, it doesn't actually fundamentally matter what he was hit by. There was an attempt on his life, and the product of that was that he was wounded and that other people were wounded and that one man was killed. So I'm not really fundamentally sure why this matters too much in either scenario, but the left is making a huge deal out of this. He wasn't actually shot. He wasn't shot. Really? This is what you want to spend your time on? Additionally, I see our buddy Mark Levin, who you hear every day here on this excellent station, pointed out today, the fact that President Trump was shot and the idiot FBI director says something so bizarre and stupid is disqualifying. He needs to be removed, says Mark Levin. Yeah, and of course, for all of the other abuses that the FBI has perpetrated on the American people because of their political views, that would be another good reason to do that very thing. I completely agree with Mark here. Let me take a phone call. Robert's calling in from South Carolina now on line 7. Robert, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. And as always, thanks for keeping it real and reporting the real news.
Thank you, sir. Go for it.
Hey, listen, first I want to give out a shout out to your caller, Mike, from Iran. Thank you, Mike, for doing your research. Spread the word, brother. So listen, Director Wray doesn't know if Trump was hit with a bullet, even though the New York Times photographer, what's his name, Doug Mills, captured the bullet in the air near his head.
Yep.
But he knows, Vince, he knows the Russian collusion, the J6, and the Hunter computer was disinformation, all without proof. Stevie Wonder could see it was a bullet, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Good thing. Yeah, I mean, it's just a good thing that Director Wray is not biased towards Trump, as he supports the liberals trying to downplay the assassination attempt, right? And now they want to interview Trump. I took the time today to read the Reagan assassination attempt report.
Yeah.
They didn't interview Ronald Reagan. Why would they? I think Wray wants to set up Donald Trump for a 1001 violation, which is a false swearing under oath, to set him up for impeachment or something else to disqualify him from being a presidential candidate. Now, and I'll turn it over to you. That's all I got to say, Vince.
Yeah, if I'm Trump, I'm not taking this meeting for the reason that you just laid out, and so that people know what Robert's talking about. I hadn't brought this up. The FBI is seeking to interview Trump as a part of the investigation. And they say, well, he was a victim, so as a crime victim, we have to chat with him. I think you've got enough information. First of all, Trump as a victim has already relived this event in public. He did an entire speech about it at the convention. You can rely on his words there instead of having him sit down with you and to give you some sort of further testimony. Additionally, unless this is a criminal investigation into the behavior of the people who allowed Trump to be shot, no thanks. No thanks, because what has the federal government done with its meetings with Trump officials in the lead up to presidential elections? Not good things, have they?
No, they have not, Vince. And, in fact, everything they've done is nefarious. So, Trump needs, hopefully his lawyers listen to you like most of America does. And he hears on your show you telling him, don't take this interview.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, just ask like people like Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley. They straight up said we were given briefings specifically to set us up. The feds were giving us these were meeting with us as a means to set us up. And the same thing definitely happened with Trump and on and on and on. That by this point you have to have learned your lesson, or else you're never going to learn it. Robert, thank you. Well, smart points.
Thank you, Vince.
And to add to what Robert's saying here, the Secret Service has already confirmed it. It's not just you and I looking at the photos. It's not just Trump saying he was shot through the ear. It's not just Ronnie Jackson looking at Trump and saying he was shot through the ear. The Secret Service, by way of NBC, no great lover of Trump, has confirmed that he was shot with a bullet, not a piece of shrapnel, not a piece of glass. In fact, NBC's Ken Delanian, now, let's see, almost very close to, it was the 18th, so it would have been 5 days after the shooting. And the left was in, again, full force in BlueAnon mode about this conspiracy theory. Trump wasn't hit with a bullet. No bullet. What's the evidence? Well, other than the gun being fired and the bullet hitting him. Ken Delanian tweets, per Julia Ainsley, a reporter at NBC, a Secret Service spokesman confirms Trump was struck by a bullet, not a piece of glass. Not a piece of glass. Oh, and another piece, insofar as we're like destroying this conspiracy theory, what glass would he have been hit by? What glass was around him that would have shattered, that would have struck his ear? The answer to that is only the teleprompters. There was a teleprompter to his side, of course, because he's using it, relying on it to help inform at least part of his speech, although he spent much of it off the teleprompter. In fact, to the extent that he even gave that speech, being off teleprompter saved his life. He was staring at a screen, just doing what Kamala Harris can, which is talking off the top of his head about the illegal alien problem we have in this country and what happened since his presidency, pointing at that famous chart now. And he was shot in the ear. The teleprompters were entirely intact. After the shooting, they were still standing there. So what glass are you talking about? It's really also tragically stupid. But you have Chrispher Wray breathing further life into this thing, and now the New York Times today saying, well, we looked really closely at this, and it sure seems like it was a bullet. You people are crazy. Mike's in Sunshine now, line 3. Mike, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, thanks for taking my call. I think it was Chris Plant who let us all know that this was an AR-15 chambered in .223 or 5.56 NATO, which is the metric version. And the .223 is the second smallest center fire bullet that you can send down range. Right. A 17 is a center fire, might be the smallest. And when I saw that wound, I went, that's a 22. That's 22s are rim fire, but the .223 is center fire. And it was clearly a bullet that hit Donald Trump.
Yeah, it was a graze wound. He caught a graze wound to the top of his ear.
the width of that the width, if you look at that ear, the width of that wound, thank God he wasn't hit by a 308 or a 300 caliber weapon. It might have killed him. It might have really done some damage.
Yeah, and and part of this, what you're getting into is the actual facts about what an AR-15 is chambered in 5.56 or 2.23, which is the conventional way that most ARs are chambered. And when you fire a gun like that, first of all, it's an excellent training gun for people who are learning to fire rifles in the first place because the kick isn't that hard. You know, it's actually a pretty good gun to learn how to shoot with. This is a situation where the left has literally no idea what they're talking about. They're saying stuff like, oh, if he was actually hit by a bullet from an AR, they've become so convinced that this is like firing a nuclear missile if you shoot an AR. They think that if you get hit by this thing, there'll be nothing left. The body will disintegrate. There's no way that he actually got hit by this. But as you're pointing out, Mike, a graze wound from a .22 caliber bullet is something that you can survive, and it'll look very much like what Donald Trump just sustained.
Correct. And the two people who were wounded, thank God it was a 2.23. If it was a 308 or a 300 Win Mag, they'd be dead. I think we would have 3 dead people today.
Yes. No, you're totally right about that, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, Mike bringing the details. That's right. But of course, it doesn't stop the conspiracy theories here. Frank is calling in now from Ashburn, line 5. Frank, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Hope you are well. Thanks for your great show and Loving America.
Thank you, Frank.
I think it's absolutely disgusting how you have the leader, the head of our supposed premier law enforcement agency, and it almost seemed like with that comment about, well, we don't even know if he got hit by a bullet. It seemed like it was doffing it off, and he just kind of shrugging his shoulders. It was disgusting. Yeah. And as conservatives, everybody should see how biased everything is right now, and it's just, and I don't know if you saw the opening remarks from the House when they were talking to Kim Cheadle, and the Democrat side, it was all about gun control. His own opening remarks.
It was.
It wasn't even about that.
It was like
I
think it was in that hearing. It was like DC's delegate, the fake Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who was spending the whole time talking about how we disarm people. Aren't AR-15s dangerous? Can we take those guns away from Americans? And so their position is to leave us all even less safe. That they take every tragedy, every time somebody gets shot, their goal is to see if they can't make the country even more dangerous, and then they dress it up as this is for your security.
Well, and this is all, as we know, it's a play to get our freedom, just like the defund the police. That's all about a national police force. That's all it's about. And they are you have to admire one thing. They are so resolute and non-stopping, and we have to be on our side just as resolute that we're not going to let this happen. We have to be focused and stand by your guns, as they say.
Yeah.
And to fight this, because they're coming with it from every single one. I think even Biden, on his little speech, he talked a little bit about something about that. And it's just and then, of course, the comment, he did it for his party in the country. Well, that should tell everybody something.
Yeah, the order of events is really important there. The order of, he says it was party first, the country also, maybe, possibly. But no, party is the big thing. You're totally right. Frank, thank you very, very much. All right, hold on. It's 5. This whole thing gets even dumber, if you can believe it. The BlueAnon conspiracy theory. The FBI just put out a statement here in the last hour. Brett Baer at the Fox News Channel sharing this. FBI statement officially attributable to the agency and not a specific person. Hilarious. They don't even want to put their name on it. They're so scared that the left will judge them for telling the truth. What struck former President Trump in the ear was a bullet, whether whole or fragmented into smaller pieces, fired from the deceased subject's rifle. Okay, as my buddy Jeff Ingersoll over at the Daily Caller points out, he says, what is it with this whether whole or fragmented into smaller pieces BS? He goes, are these people bleeping serious? Have any of them ever shot a single 5.56 round? What did it hit on the way to Trump besides air? Good question. There were no obstructions between Trump and the shooter. The bullet is what hit Trump. And yet the FBI, still, they just a little bit of wiggle room. Maybe it was a bullet fragment. Okay, so now we agree. Either way, it was a bullet. What? Boy. And Trump himself is one of the first people who said Not that it needed to be said, but he was like, I was shot by a bullet. He said in one of his early statements, he was like, a shot through the ear, which everyone can see. There was blood all over him. Where do you think it came from? And he said this. And since then, the media have been breathing life into a conspiracy theory that, well, if Trump said it, it's probably a lie, so we need to keep asking questions until we confirm it. That's their posture. Can you imagine if they took that posture even in a small way with Biden? Everything Biden says is a lie. You can't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. If Biden had been shot in the ear and then said, I was shot through the ear, I'd say, oh, let's take a pause here. Let's verify that that's real. Can we hear from the White House physician? And then after that, I just want like actual paperwork to back all of this up, because everything that guy says is a lie. He claims he was arrested visiting Nelson Mandela. Lie. He claims he was a truck driver. Lie. He claims he grew up in the Puerto Rican community. Lie. He claims he went to the black church every Sunday. That's a lie. He claims on and on and on. His presidential campaigns have been defined by plagiarism, stealing, theft, lying. Corn pop, please. Well, if Trump says it, it's probably not true. One of your guys, Doug Mills, the New York Times photographer, captured a picture of a bullet going through his ear and flying behind him. What more do you need? Power, they screeched. Power. They think that if they can undermine Trump, they can keep it. Hoke is in Round Hill, line 7. Hoke, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, if you had told me that Chrispher Wray was going to find a way to make him look like a bigger idiot than Jim Comey, I would have laughed. But I'm convinced that he must have called Comey on his way into the hearing and said, Jim, hold my beer.
Hold my beer. I'm going to one-up you here, brother. I've got something even crazier I'm going to do right now. I'm going to breathe life into this very stupid conspiracy theory. And now we're being told by the FBI officially, yes, he was shot by a bullet, but maybe not a whole bullet.
Well, hey, somebody questioned Chrispher Wray, so he might be firing somebody soon.
Oh, sure. He'll get to that eventually. All right. Coming up, Terry Schilling will be with us from the American Principles Project. We've got a lot to talk about. You know these Olympic ceremonies that are supposed to be broadcast here in the United States tonight? Well, they're already underway, and they involve a lot of drag queens. What the heck is going on? Terry Schilling joins us in a moment. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. So we're getting our first images right now from the opening ceremonies of the 2024 Summer Olympics in France, and the images are frankly awful, actually awful. There is, and I don't know what NBC is going to broadcast tonight. You know, in the normal situation is they save all of the kind of the best events up during the day, and then they air them on delay for the American audience in the evening. And so presumably NBC is supposed to be airing the opening ceremonies tonight. But those opening ceremonies, if we get served the same feed that the international feed that's coming out, and why wouldn't we? The opening ceremonies are the same thing that everybody sees. You're going to see a lot of drag queens in this thing tonight. And not only are you going to see drag queens, which are men dressed as women in ways that are designed to mock women, but they recreate the image of the Last Supper as seen in Leonardo da Vinci's famous mural, his famous painting of the Last Supper. They recreate it and they insult it by having all of these men dressed as women pretend to be depicting it. And then at the center of the table, according to the video I'm seeing come out, they lift the cover off of what looks like, you might off of a roast for what's in the center of the table, what they're consuming. And it's a man who's practically naked, whose body's painted blue. That's what they're doing tonight at the Olympics, the international athletic competition, the opening ceremony, a direct attack on Christians to begin this event. For more on this, not the topic that I thought we'd be talking about, but I definitely want to get his opinion on it. Terry Schilling is here. He's the president of the American Principles Project, and he joins us now. Terry, good afternoon to you, sir.
Thanks so much for having me, Vince. And I just want to say, I love coming on your show because all my neighbors listen to you. Even my electrician, Kevin, listens to your show. And so I love coming on because I have amazing conversations at the pool the next day.
Thank you. Well, I shout out to Kevin and all your neighbors. I really appreciate everybody listening. It's a big deal to me. What do you make of these images that you and I are seeing right now ahead of their American broadcast tonight?
Well, look, we've known for some time that American elites are completely degenerate. They're corrupted. They can't tell right from wrong to the point where, look, these are the same people that are putting drag queens in our libraries to read to little children, right? This is part of the plan. They want to change our culture. They want to change our society. And, I'll tell you, I think that having the drag queens to open the Olympics is a lot less offensive than having them read to little tiny children who still believe in the Easter Bunny. Right? It's just disgusting, and these are decrepit and degenerate and sordid people. They have really bad goals for our country.
I can't imagine them doing this to another faith, though. For them to create a depiction, like an explicitly offensive depiction of the Last Supper, of Christ's Last Supper with his apostles, using drag queens to do it, is about as clear as a shot at Christianity as you could possibly summon.
No, that's exactly right. But this is how all of their claims about Christians being intolerant and bigoted are just BS, is because they do this to us. They don't do it to Muhammad because they know that they would get shot up and bombed. Right? That's what happened to Charlie Hebdo anyway. They just drew a normal picture of the guy and they shot up that place. They're not afraid of Christians. They bully Christians, and it's because we have more tolerance. No other nation in the world, there's a lot of Muslim nations that compete in the Olympics. They aren't afraid of they're afraid of offending them. Except, I think this drag queen stuff is very offensive to these people. It's Christianity has always been the target. They know that we're the real enemies that take seriously to their evil agenda. It's that simple.
It's just too much, and I hope people wake up to all of this. If this doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will. Let's talk about what's going on with the Trump campaign. Do I understand correctly? You met with President Trump recently?
So we're filming a documentary on the woke military, and I'll tell you, Vince, I never kiss and tell, but I'll tell you what, man, I left meeting him, and I was enraged at what the lamestream media has done, not just to him by maligning him nonstop, but what they've deprived the American people of. This is a guy who was so thoughtful and considerate. He was asking so many questions about our opinions on J.D. Vance and other things. And, he really solicits a lot. He's a thoughtful person. He walked in the room. He's in charge. Right? He's a competent person. He's someone that Americans should be revering as much as they revere Reagan or Lincoln even. He's a pivotal American figure, and he should have won in a 50-state landslide last election because of how great of a man he is. He's larger than life. He's one of the best presidents we've ever had, and it wasn't a coincidence that we decided to launch our $18 million campaign this week after that meeting. He's the real deal, and he's the best possible thing for the American family.
Tell me about the $18 million campaign. What does that entail?
Well, we're going to make sure – a lot of people have been focusing on Kamala and Biden's economy and the crime and all of that. But what's not getting pointed out enough is her cultural agenda, which is radical. And to put this in perspective, so we're going to spend $18 million across the top 7 swing states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Montana for the Senate. But then also we're going to spend it in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia, North Carolina for the presidential. We want to highlight the fact that Kamala is the worst possible thing for you and your family. She comes from a state, by the way, California, and agrees with this law, where you can take away custody from parents if you oppose a gender transition for your under 18 child. That's how radical she is. And on top of that, Vince, a lot of people don't know this yet. She, as AG of California, oversaw the first ever taxpayer-funded gender transition for a convicted murderer. She gave the guy parole, and this wasn't last year, this wasn't 4 years ago, this wasn't even 6 years ago. It was over 10 years ago. Before most Americans had ever even heard of the concept of transgender, she was paying for these procedures with taxpayer dollars for convicted murderers. That is how extreme. Meanwhile, her Department of Justice is putting 75-year-old ladies in federal prison for 2 years for having the audacity to pray at an abortion clinic where they found 5 dead babies in the dumpster. This is an evil woman who wants to destroy you and your family and your children. We can't let her back in the White House.
And this ideology, what you're talking about with the prisons, I mean, really, it puts more and more people in danger. Like either you're a sucker or you're complicit on this, or both, because what you have is men who are convicted of deeply violent crimes, and then they will claim to the court, oh, actually, I'm a woman and I should be in a woman's prison. And people like Kamala Harris, they fought for this crap, and they put them there where they can hurt more women inside of a contained, imprisoned environment.
Well, and one thing that people aren't talking about is the rapid increase in pregnancies and STDs in women's prisons, and also rapes, by the way. It's not a coincidence that once they started putting men who claim to be women from the men's prisons into the women's prisons, that all this stuff skyrockets. It's common sense, and you have to be a total idiot to put women in danger like this. You have to either be evil or an idiot or some combination of both, and I think it's both. Yeah,
it's super dangerous. What do you make of all these attacks on J.D. Vance for saying that America should have more children?
Well, I've got 7 kids myself.
You're doing your part. There's no question. I'm not doubting that.
But I'll tell you, having children is the most beautiful and wonderful thing you can do. And so many people have been choosing to not do that, and they're missing out hugely. And what JD wants, he knows something that's very basic that every American used to know just intrinsically, which is that families are a nation's future. Right? How your family goes is how the whole nation goes and the whole world in which we live. That's just the reality, because families produce the next generation, right? We produce the next citizens. And so if you have weak families, you're going to have weak future citizens, people that don't know how to work, people that don't know how to read or do math, people that are dishonest, right? If you screw up parenting, you're going to produce real problems for the next generation of Americans. We have to get back to encouraging people to get married and have babies as young as possible. Obviously after high school, at least, hopefully. But I just want to say it's the most beautiful thing, and single, never married, childless people can't fathom it. But you know what, Vince? You and I know what it's like to have children and what it's like to not have children. And I think we both agree that it's better to have children and to be married than to not. It's a totally different world, and it's tough to describe to people that have never experienced it. You have to go through it, and no one regrets it. And if you do regret having children, you're a scumbag. Like, you're a terrible human being if you regret the children that you produced. It's I don't know what else to say. It has made my life.
It has made my life better in ways that I didn't even know that it could. I didn't even anticipate. And for that reason, I can see you have 7 kids. I can see why you're such an evangelist for it. It does improve you. It actually is work too, by the way. I know, don't let anybody lie to you. It's work, but it's totally rewarding. Let me play some of the J.D. Vance conversation today with Megyn Kelly on her show. He addressed some of the criticism. There's video going around of him back on Tucker's show a couple years ago, kind of talking about how the left is allowing itself to be guided too often by childless cat ladies. A throwaway line, but what they're not appreciating is the virtue that is found in his remarks. Take a listen.
I know the media wants to attack me and wants me to back down on this, Megyn, but the simple point that I made is that having children, becoming a father, becoming a mother, I really do think it changes your perspective in a pretty profound way. This is something, of course, we've recognized for hundreds of years in this country, that human civilization has always recognized. But there's a deeper point here, Megyn. It's not a criticism of people who don't have children. I explicitly said in my remarks, despite the fact the media has lied about this, that this is not about criticizing people who, for various reasons, didn't have kids. This is about criticizing the Democratic Party for becoming anti-family and anti-child. We have to ask ourselves, Megyn, why do we have masking of toddlers years after the pandemic ended? Why do we have the Harris campaign coming out this very morning, Megyn, and saying that we should not have the child tax credit, which lowers tax rates for parents of young children? It's because they have become anti-family and anti-kid. And I'm proud to stand up for parents, and I hope that parents out there recognize that I'm a guy who wants to fight for you. I want to fight for your interests. I want to fight for your stake in the country, and that is what this is fundamentally about. The Democrats in the past 5-10 years, Megyn, they have become anti-family, It's built into their policy. It's built into the way they talk about parents and children, and it's time that we called that out. I don't think we should back down from it, Megan. I think we should be honest about the problem. He's totally right. And not only are they attacking family, they're attacking the building blocks of the family. They attack biology itself. When you've got, even in what we started with here, Terry Schilling, when you have men pretending to be women depicting the Last Supper at the Olympics tonight, what they're doing is launching an all-out assault on the building blocks of everything.
That's exactly right. And here's what I'll tell you. There's a political interest here. If you look at the exit polling from every single election from here to Kingdom Come, it's so predictable, it's boring. 68% of unmarried women vote for Democrats, whereas 57% of married women vote for Republicans. That's not a coincidence. They want, you know it, we all know it. When you get married, it's the first time that you have to really think about and care for someone besides yourself. The Democratic Party is a party of narcissism. It's about me and what I can get. It goes back to that JFK line. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, what you can do is you can get married and have kids and make sure that we have good future citizens. But this is a political interest. They benefit from delaying and stalling marriage because that's when you really start to grow up and start to become much more mature and care about other people besides yourself. Yeah, and then they also advance that to advance the interests of the donor class too, who really don't want people tied up with families. They'd rather have them tied to their desks. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time as always. Terry Schilling with the American Principles Project, and my hello to Kevin, your electrician as well. Let me pick things up on line 4. Ron is calling in from Maryland. Ron, if you're there with us, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Go for it.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the moral in this experience of socialism, I think, is a call to embrace the genuine Christian values. And I think that's what saves the Western Hemisphere, including all of Americas and Europe.
Yeah, our founders knew it, didn't they?
It's very well reflected in their work. Yes. Yeah. And I had a question and a concern. May I?
Fire away. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. First, my concern is that since the U.S. policy for the past several years has been an open-door policy for people to, the illegal immigration that has been going on.
Yes.
So now, there are, of course, very bad elements among them. But there are also people who came here with a hope, although it was illegal, but the door was open to them.
Uh-huh.
So I would think my concern is taking the bad apples out. And there are people who will be productive who came here, because my parents came here with a hope. Oh, they brought us here. They brought what they have here.
Did they come illegally?
With them. No, they came here legally. They brought their education, their experience, their expertise, whatever they have, their culture.
Sure.
They with a hope. And once you come here, eventually you develop that love for America. And that's what happened to us. One of my sons is a veteran, U.S. Army combatant, and he is a wounded warrior as well.
Sure.
So you see that the people who have come here illegally, it's not all of it is their fault. It's things that happen.
They did choose to come here illegally, didn't they?
Yes, but the doors were open. That's the issue.
But it was a violation of our laws. And so here's the key.
Yeah.
When whether it's mass deportation or if it's just creating the conditions whereby people like that can't be exploited in the United States, that the next administration needs to focus really sincerely on this issue to make it so it doesn't happen again. And that includes foreclosing on the ability for employers to exploit foreign illegals
in order to undercut American workers and take advantage of the people who are coming across our border. We should end that system entirely. We should make it so that American citizens and people who are here legally, they can get the jobs, they can work, and if we need more workers, we can do it on our own terms, rather than having the out-of-control, chaotic system that's leading to so much suffering all over the place. We need to get a hold of this. I appreciate the call. I really do, Ron, and I really empathize with your first point. I share it entirely. Returning our nation to God is critical to getting us back on track. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.